All right, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. faking his eye injury, according to Bernard Hopkins, or at least that's what he is heavily insinuating. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Before I get into the subject matter of the video though, please make sure if you're not already subscribed to the channel, to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video. It would be greatly appreciated. It goes a long way towards getting the channel to grow. Now, this is almost comedy to me, but I'm gonna cover it anyway because it's fun. There's a lot of real wild accusations flying around about Errol Spence Jr. and his eye and whether or not he's actually is injured or not. So a little bit of background before we get into it, because Bernard Hopkins is joined in, of all people, right? Errol Spence Jr. was set to fight Manny Pacquiao for his WBC and IBF welterweight championship belts. And the fight was to happen not this Saturday, but the next Saturday. And Errol Spence Jr. was forced to pull out, according to him, because it was discovered in a pre-fight doctor's exam that he had a torn retina. And you know, a torn retina it's the back of your eye, and it definitely affects your vision. And if you don't correct it right, or if the problem gets worse, you can go blind in the eye that you have that torn retina. So, of course, Errol Spence Jr. has to go into immediate surgery, and he's not able to fight Manny Pacquiao. And then, as expected, a bunch of people, well, actually, I can't even say that I expected it. I really thought that people would just say, oh man, how unfortunate it is that he's got an injury to his eye. I wonder if it was connected to his car accident or not, but then just kind of be upset that the fight's not happening. But that's not what people have done. People have really gone out of their way to accuse Errol Spence Jr. of faking the fight, faking the eye injury, and it not actually being real. So, but then when Bernard Hopkins did it, that's when I started saying, okay, I'm really got to take notice of this now, because Bernard Hopkins, who is not usually somebody to come with, you know, a lot of conspiracy theories or whatever, or what have you, but for him to say that, look, this stuff looks real funny to him, and he even went so far as to say that Errol Spence Jr. should show proof of his eye injury, because to him, he just doesn't make sense that this would come and happen all out of the blue like that. It sounds, you know, fishy, and that, you know, there may be other reasons at play, and he also insinuated that he actually knew something that people were saying, because he was saying, you know, maybe some people, you know, are just the ones to come out there and tell you and have the courage to tell you that there's something not right about this, right? So to me, it's like Bernard Hopkins is saying, but not saying that he has some inside information on it. But for me, like, I compare this situation to like Tyson Fury and his COVID scenario. Like in the COVID scenario with Tyson Fury, there was plenty of just plain face evidence that the guy was not telling the truth. You know, for example, he got caught in public, he got caught in lies. I don't know if Errol Spence Jr. has been caught in any lies. He got a surgery on his eye, showed people the picture of him coming out after he got the surgery on his eye. And it sounds like if you were going to lie about something, lying about, like, who would lie about a torn retina? That doesn't even make sense. But versus Tyson Fury, who was definitely caught out there, because he would say, he, you know, said that he had on, I think it was I almost had these dates memorized. On the 9th of July, he said that he tested positive for COVID and was going to have to pull out of the fight. But on the 14th of July, he's out walking around and, you know, taking pictures with people at car dealerships and taking pictures of people at the casino. And then so there's only 5 days difference between that. Why in the world is he out there doing it? So it becomes obvious to people, especially with the rest of his story that he tells, which is that, you know, he just compounding it with lie after lie after lie. it's easily apparent for the reason why he didn't, and he was doing things beforehand like taking the fight to arbitration or taking, claiming that he didn't have to give Deontay Wilder the rematch at all. There's a lot of stuff that he was doing in order to, basically raise red flags about whether he wanted the fight or not. In this particular instance, I don't see any red flags that would tell me that Errol Spence Jr. didn't want to fight with Manny Pacquiao. He was training. He didn't he was the one that called for the fight and was actually calling out Manny Pacquiao to begin with. This is a big payday for for Errol Spence Jr. My understanding is at least a $20 million payday for Errol Spence Jr. now that he's out of. So, he was favored to win the fight. So it just doesn't make any sense to me why he would pull out of the fight. And what I attested it to is just the big commotion was I can understand it when it was Manny Pacquiao fans that were doing it, because that's what they do. Pretty much anytime Manny Pacquiao loses, they've got an excuse for why Manny Pacquiao loses. Against Errol Spence, against Jeff Horn, he was robbed. That is not much of an excuse, but it still is. Tim Bradley, that loss, he was robbed. The Floyd Mayweather fight, he had his shoulder hurt, right? So it's just whenever Manny Pacquiao loses, there's a reason why. But that is for the people that were referred to as Pactards. Back when there was a bunch of battles between what they would call the Flomos, the Floyd Mayweather fans, and the Pactards, the people who were big supporters of Manny Pacquiao. Pretty much I expect for them to pile on and say that, oh yeah, all you're really doing is ducking because you knew you were going to lose. That stuff makes sense to me because those are really avid fans. And so I expect that. But for Bernard Hopkins to come out with that is, I don't know. It gives it, I guess, more credence because now he's saying that he's actually heard something. But I would appreciate it if he would tell people what it is that he heard. If he had somebody tell him that something had happened with Errol Spence, like training camp wasn't going well, and he really wasn't reacting well to the southpaws, and right, if that's what it is, then tell people what it is. Don't stand behind it and just go out there and say, I don't really believe it, and it just sounds like some real funniness to me. And that just seems like maybe Bernard Hopkins is doing a little, just maybe a little bit of hating. If this was Eddie Hearn, I know what they would say. They would say, oh, the pay-per-view sales and the ticket sales weren't doing well, so that's why they didn't want to have the fight, and they changed it over to a Yordenis Ugas fight. And Yordenis Ugas was supposed to be fighting for the W. They had a beef between Manny Pacquiao and Yordenis Ugas for about who's the real WBA champ. But none of that stuff makes sense to me. And I don't have a problem with people coming up with theories of people conspiring to do things. This is boxing, and as we know, boxing can be very, very crooked and things aren't always as they see. But this one doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.